This raises a whole other question. How did China stow away this secret and impossibly huge universe of oil, a Manhattan of oil? Where did it all come from? And there are basically two answers to this. Answer number one is Iran, and answer number two is Russia. Let me explain.
The Iran and Libya sanctions bill I signed today will help to deny those countries the money they need to finance international terrorism.
1996, President Bill Clinton signs a law cutting off the world from buying Iranian oil. We'll get to how in a second. 2022, Russia invades Ukraine, and the head of the European Union makes a big announcement.
So today we will propose to ban all Russian oil from Europe,
which the US and other big countries joined. All of which did, it's easier actually if I show you on the board. So two of the world's biggest oil producers, Russia and Iran, were mostly cut off from this global oil market. All that oil sloshing around, stuck with nowhere to go, nobody to buy it. But wouldn't you know it, bit by bit, actually, let me show you this too on the board. China found a way to get all that forbidden Iranian and Russian oil. This is a report by a think tank called the Atlantic Council, tracking China's secret oil trade with Iran and Russia. And they did it by using dark fleet tankers that operate outside of maritime laws and obscure the operations. They rebrand the oil as Malaysian, funnel it through small independent refineries called teapots, and then route the money via smaller, back-alley financial institutions with names like Bank of Kunlun. But okay, if the world knows China is doing this, and all of this oil is supposedly under global economic sanctions that make it forbidden to buy it, then how does China get away with it? Well, it's by using their other secret weapon. This, China's currency, the renminbi, the yuan. And the reason that this works, that it's a magic hack, is because of something I didn't tell you about earlier about this global oil market. All of this oil is traded in this, US dollars. Couple of fine fellas we got up here on the board. All of the sales, all of the purchases, it's all in US dollars. And the reason for this is that oil trades, remember, happen between countries. But it would be chaos if every country paid every other country in a different currency. Nobody would know what the real price was, and oil exporters would be stuck with this grab bag of 100 foreign currencies that they wouldn't be able to use. But everybody can use US dollars. Everybody wants US dollars. They're a safe way to save your country's oil revenues because the dollar is stable. Every other country accepts it in trade. And trading all in one currency means there's just one price, which is what you need for a unified global market to function. But this gives the US a lot of power because trading in US dollars means those transactions have to be processed by a US-based bank, which means the US government can tell those banks to block oil trades with any country it doesn't like. People truly do not realize how much US global power comes from these little greenbacks. But this means China and Russia and Iran were able to bypass this whole system by using a different currency, China's currency, to process the sales. This makes these oil trades basically invisible to the US financial system and therefore the US government, which means the US can't block it from happening. And if you're wondering why more countries don't do this kind of thing, it's because they don't have a currency Iran or Russia or whoever would want. The renminbi can't do everything the dollar can do, but it can buy stuff from China. And China is the world's largest exporter of stuff. So that currency is still useful enough for Iran and Russia to go to the trouble. Probably the only other currencies in the world valuable enough to do this are the Japanese yen and the euro. But Japan and the European Union are big supporters of sanctions on Iran and Russia, so they wouldn't want to do this. So it is really just China that can pull this off. And being the only willing buyer of Iran and Russia's oil means they get a big discount, which is how they were able to quietly stock up 1 billion plus barrels of probably mostly Iranian and Russian oil so they can magically stop importing enough oil for enough time to basically save the world. So that is how China saved you, me, the global economy, and especially the United States and Donald Trump from the largest oil shock in history. But that still leaves us the question of why. Like, I'm more curious than ever. Why? Why would they bail us out, and why would they do it in total silence? And to answer this, we are going to need the other side of the board. So we're going to use the board to go through 4 theories for why China did this that I think all have some merit and some evidence to them. But first I want to rule out 2 that I think don't scan. Number 1, probably the one you've been shouting at your screen for the last 10 minutes because it seems so obvious, is that China did this. China stopped importing oil just to protect themselves from high oil prices. But you know what? This one doesn't hold up. Here's why in one number. $74. That is the average replacement price on China's oil reserves that they have been burning up. Here's the price of oil over the last 6 months. And here's where the price dropped below $74. If China was just trying to protect itself from price shocks, this is the point that they would have started buying again. They would have actually made a profit by buying at this price. But they didn't. They just kept burning reserves, which means they had some other motive, right? So, second wrong theory we need to rule out, this was all a soft power play for global goodwill. I'm sorry about the panda. I know it's a total cliche. When you Google image search Chinese soft power, this is the first thing that comes up, so I don't know, I went with it. Anyway, it's also wrong. This soft power theory does not square with China's big ban against its refineries exporting jet fuel or gasoline, because this really hurt the neighbors in Asia who count on China for that stuff and are the exact countries China most wants to improve its standing with. For another thing, remember China did all this and didn't talk about it. If you save the world to make countries like you, wouldn't you, I don't know, mention it at least once instead of hiding it in secrecy? So these theories, I think these are out. So now let's look at the theories that do make sense, starting with the big one, Taiwan. Here's Asia, and here's the Strait of Hormuz, which we learned controls 20% of the world's oil flows. And now this is the Strait of Malacca, even narrower, even easier to close. The ships that go through here carry 80% of all China's oil. And in any war scenario with Taiwan, one of the very first things that happens is the US uses its naval supremacy to close Malacca, like Iran closed Hormuz, shutting off China from outside oil and bringing China to its knees. So yeah, pretty powerful, right? Defeat China without ever coming within 1,000 miles of it. And this has obsessed China's leaders for decades. They actually have a name for it. They call it the Malacca Dilemma. And it applies to any war scenario with the US, but Taiwan is probably the likeliest. So how can you neutralize the threat of suddenly losing access to outside oil? Well, one way is to build up renewable power sources like wind and solar, which yeah, check, China has been doing. Another is burning more coal, check.